Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I'm Vince D'Addario, and I am joined by a very special guest in Tom Noie, ND Insider with the South End Tribune. Tom, thank you for hanging out with me today, my man.
I've got nothing else to do on a snowy Thursday in January after covering a 9-month, it felt like 9-year football season. So
long. So long.
I keep trying to remind myself, February is next week, and we just got done covering football.
Seriously, I mean, you're not kidding. That's after the game was over, and we have an 11-hour drive back home, and I'm thinking to myself, spring ball starts in like a month. It's the longest, obviously the longest football season ever in college football. And, Notre Dame was there from start to finish, and we were there start to finish. And it was one of the longest seasons. I mean, it felt like the longest season ever. You know what I mean?
But you knew it was going to be that way. Like you kind of got the idea that if this thing goes the distance, they're going to be playing on January 20th. And the more time you spent around that football team, the more you thought they got a chance to get to the national championship game. Maybe not win the national championship, depending on who was coming out of the other side of the bracket. But when this thing got rolling, you could see that it was going to get rolling for a while through December and then through most of January the way it did.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This team had something special to it. There's no doubt about that. And you could feel it from, September on. And you could feel it a little bit prior to the NIU game, but definitely post NIU game, right? I mean, it was a different feeling. And when you've covered enough teams in your day, in my day, like you can feel when a team is a little bit different, and this team was a little bit different, right?
I drew a lot of comparisons to this year's Notre Dame football team to the 2014-15 Notre Dame men's basketball team that went to the Elite Eight and should have beat Kentucky and should have gotten to the Final Four and should have won a national championship. But you just get around that group like that, the 18 women's basketball program that won a national championship in Columbus, Ohio. You get around the group like that, and you can just tell that there was something different about them.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to lose. And for the most part, that team that went 32 and Notre Dame men's basketball team that went 32-6 didn't lose. And the women's basketball team obviously didn't lose. And when you were around this group, after the Purdue game, like everybody, there were people that were thinking Purdue was going to upset Notre Dame. Like,
yes.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Coming off NIU, and we're driving to West Lafayette that morning, and we're like, what are we going to see? Like we just don't know, given what happened against Northern Illinois the previous week. Who are these guys? And then all of a sudden it's 66-7, and you're thinking, you know what? I think they're going to be okay.
Right. Well, because, to the credit of the people of all of us at that time, right? Like, okay, you had this team that went down to Texas A&M, beat them at their own place, hostile environment, the whole deal, right? And then you follow it up with that loss to NIU where basically nothing went right. I mean, it was a horrible game start to finish, right? And then you're traveling down to Purdue and you're like, I don't know. I don't know what to expect going into this game. And I remember distinctly saying on the show, it's like, this is literally a one game at a time situation. Everybody's like, oh, they're going to lose 4 or 5 more games. It is one game at a time. And Notre Dame really kind of adopted that mantra because it really was a one game season week after week after week.
It was. And then by the time you got to the postseason, it was like college football playoff. They've been in a playoff since September 14th.
Exactly.
Like it was win or go home basically the entire season. You play a Saturday, win that one, start preparing for the next Saturday, win that one, keep moving on. So the postseason for this football team was like, it was no big deal because they had been in that type of situation for so long. There was no extra pressure on these guys once Indiana came on the schedule, or Georgia or Penn State, because it was like, we've had to win and fight for our lives ever since NIU. So it was going to be that way the rest of the way out.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I do want to ask, because, you're kind of giving comparisons to some pretty, some very, very good teams in Notre Dame history in various sports, right? Your experience with this Notre Dame team and your experience on the road with this team, and I mean, the last month, I mean, let's be honest, last month was exhausting for everybody involved. You know, whether you're following the team, whether you're a fan of the team, whether you are, on the team, right? Coaches, players, etc. Like, give me your kind of your experience, not just necessarily the whole season, because we kind of did that, but like the postseason itself and what it was like kind of following this team from IU all the way to Ohio State and everything in between.
It was like an NCAA tournament run where you're home, you're home for a couple of days, you're in this routine, doing this, and then you got to go back on the road. And then you just knew once they got past Indiana, all right, they're going to be in New Orleans, they're going to be in South Florida, they're going to be in Atlanta. Like I prepared myself fully when they won that first playoff game that this thing was going to go the distance and it was going to be out and back and then over to campus and doing this and doing that. And you're in a hotel and then you have media day and then you got to get the shuttle to the game and then you got to get the shuttle back and then you're flying back to South Bend. And it's just one constant game preparation, responsibility, one after another, to where you're like, really? And I'm sitting here today. Today was garbage day in our subdivision in Granger, Indiana. And I missed it because I keep thinking today's Wednesday.
Right. And
I'm like, I get ready to take my daughter to school and I see the garbage truck go past down one of the streets. And I'm like, oh, wait, today's Thursday. Like I've lost complete track of time. You don't know what day it is. You don't know where you are. You don't know where you should be next. It's like, I keep looking at the date on my laptop here, and it's next week is February.
I know.
Like what happened in January? What happened in December? Seriously. Like what happened to Christmas? I can only imagine what it was like for a Notre Dame football player who Thanksgiving comes and goes. They're on campus. Final exams come and go. They're on campus. Christmas come and go. They're on campus. The entirety of winter break comes and goes, and they're still on campus.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been crazy.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And it was a wild ride with that in mind. I mean, they missed every holiday. It was funny because somebody asked in a press conference with Marcus Freeman, hey, are you going to send the guys home for Christmas? That kind of thing. He almost laughed at the question. He's like, what are you talking about?
No, you're not going home for Christmas. We're in a college football playoff. Like that's not happening. It was just like, so I can't imagine what it was like for them. But you know what? For us, I wouldn't trade it for the world because it sure beats 4-8 or 5-7 or whatever this team might have been.
100%. Nope. Could not agree more. It was an awesome ride to be on, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to be on it because I have to remind myself too, on a fairly regular basis, like not everybody gets to experience this like we do. You know what I mean? And it's a pretty cool experience to be on that ride and just kind of following these guys and getting to know the players and the coaches for that matter. And kind of seeing it through their eyes and just being there and being a part of it. And, outside of, the tragedy that occurred in New Orleans and, the weather in Atlanta and, all of the different things that kind of went along with it. It was definitely a unique ride. That's for sure.
And it's a hard, I was supposed to land back from Atlanta at 7:00 on Tuesday night.
Okay.
I had a direct flight, Atlanta to Detroit, 7:00, land in Detroit, hop in the car, 2 hours and 40 minutes. I'd be home.
Yep.
My flight landed in Detroit at 3:30 Wednesday morning. I sat on a plane on the tarmac at Hartsfield Airport for 5 hours on Tuesday.
Did you? Really?
We went back to the gate. We reboarded at 12:20 a.m. on Wednesday, and was finally able to get home. But you know what? It was no big deal because you knew it was the end. Like we're not going to Pasadena this weekend.
True.
They're not playing a game at the Rose Bowl. The season's over. So as long as it took me to get home, I was good with it. But you know what? It was just it was a hell of a ride.
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans, South Florida, Atlanta. They Notre Dame football took us on this ride. They took their fans on this ride, and now they have to go do it again.
I know, seriously. That now that's the expectation. But
the bar is raised, baby.
That's right.
Like and that's one of the things. That's one of the things that made this so cool. This run, where we got to sit there, and when they had media days in New Orleans or South Florida or in Atlanta, you just got to sit there and really talk to and get to know guys like Jack Kaiser and Xavier Watts and Mitchell Evans, and that it made this run was fun because it was kind of unexpected. It came out of nowhere, but now it's not going to be the same because it's going to be like, hey, you got to go do it again. Like, let's go. It's not going to be, hey, we're just winging it. We're going to go all the way to the national championship game after we lost to NIU. Now the expectation is you better get back there. And, oh, by the way, you better win one.
Yeah. And, the 2024 team is going to be different than the 2025 team. And we're seeing that in perfect clarity with the transfer portal and all of that. And obviously we had more guys jump into the transfer portal today. All offensive guys right now, unless I missed something, but it's all offensive guys, majority offensive linemen outside of Colsey and Thomas, but you got Spindler, Coogan, Pendleton, Chan, all jumping into the transfer portal. So that says a couple of different things to me, right? So it says there's a lot of talent in the offensive line room.
Yep.
Okay. A lot of young talent in the offensive line room. And it says that there's some honest conversations probably taking place inside the Goog over the last few weeks, I would imagine. What are your thoughts on these guys, jump into the portal, specifically, are you surprised, all of those different things. Let's just talk portal guys. Just your thoughts on seeing these names pop up.
I got to save my portal comments for later because I know we got a portal question.
That is true.
Here's what it also says. You got a lot of smart guys over at Notre Dame.
Sure.
Especially offensive linemen. They know who the young guys are coming up. And you look at Rocco Spindler, you look at Pat Coogan. These are guys who are starters. These are guys that have earned their degrees. Why not go in the portal and see what's like? As great as this season was for guys like Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan, it's probably not getting any better. Good point. The 1 year that they have left. So why not go? And if you can max out this crazy world that we call NIL, and if you can make twice as much money, 3 times as much money, why not go do it? So whoever's in the portal, and this every year, fans of any college football team, if team A, B, or C, they get all freaked out when all these guys go in the portal. Look, it's the way the college football world. It's free agency. You have to re-recruit and recruit your roster every single year. And for every Pat Coogan or every Rocco Spindler, Notre Dame's plucking a Devontae Smith as a starter out of Alabama. So, Notre Dame's going to lose some guys, but I got a pretty good feeling that Notre Dame's going to get some guys too. Mm-hmm. And they already have.
Yeah. Well, and look, and Rocco and Pat, like, they're going to go down in history for what they did on the 24 team. Like, that doesn't change regardless of whether they finish their playing career at Notre Dame or not. They absolutely stepped up when it mattered the most. I mean, look, they weren't starters at the beginning of the season, right? I mean, I think people forget that part too, right? These two weren't starters at the beginning of the season. Rocco started last year and then got beat out, and then there were injuries, and then he got to play again, and then he played his absolute tail off the rest of the season, played injured, obviously, down the stretch. I mean, hats off to what Rocco Spindler was able to do. And then you got Pat Coogan, who, started games and then had to take a back seat and then stepped up when Ashton Craig went down at a position that he had never played before in college. Now he's at center doing yeoman's work. He, goes viral for his pregame speeches, and all of those different things. Those two guys were an integral part in what happened. They don't get to the national championship game without those two guys. The good part is there's incredible depth on the offensive line in that offensive line room. And while I would say that the competition would have been open for those guys to get their starting jobs back. There's a lot of talent there and nothing is guaranteed. So I don't blame them for taking off if that's what they want to do. And like you said, there may be a huge payday out there for one of these guys because there's going to be teams out there that'll guarantee both of them starting positions. Guaranteed.
And let's face it, we have no idea what 2025 is going to hold for this football team. But it's never going to feel the same for these guys as it felt in 2024, the way they were able to kind of bottle that magic. You're not going to be able to repeat that in 2025. You may not lose only one game in the regular season. It may be a struggle. There may be more injuries. They could say, yeah, I'm going to come back, and for everything that I did for this football program, I should be the starter. What if they're not the starter?
Right.
Like anybody that's in the transfer portal now or tomorrow or next week, they have to look out and do what's best for them.
Sure.
And for Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler, whatever they do, they'll never be able to take away 2024 from them. Ever.
Yep. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Like I said, they've etched their names in Notre Dame history with what they were able to do with this team. And it showed. I mean, they put the team first, this year. There's no doubt about it. And now it's okay to put yourself first.
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to.
Yep. I have no problem with that whatsoever. So we'll see what happens over the next couple of days and who else jumps in the portal. I have a feeling that that's not the extent of the list, and that's not coming from a position where I'm just waiting for certain guys to jump in. Like I know what's going to happen. That comes from a place of I think there's going to be more guys that jump in. I mean, that's just that's just the way it goes, And so we'll see how that list grows and what happens. And we'll have a show tomorrow. Let's see, today's Thursday, so I get my days straight too. So we'll have a show tomorrow at 5:00. It'll be Friday Fire, and at least Sean and I will be there. We'll see if young Jesse Stiers decides to show up for that one. We'll talk about new names potentially that jump into the portal between now and tomorrow at 5:00. But I just have a feeling that list is going to grow. Yes, and Beefeater wants to know if Tai Chan is in the portal. Yes, Tai Chan is in the portal as well. So Tai Chan, Sam Pendleton, Pat Coogan, Rocco Spindler, Jaden Thomas, Deion Colsey. That's kind of the list as we sit here. And of course, Mickey went in earlier this year as well.
And Benjamin Morrison declared the NFL draft.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate that. Yep, Ben Morrison made it official. He is going to head to the NFL draft. And I don't think anybody's overly surprised about that particular announcement. Had a really cool video that he put out kind of showing himself in like the, Little League football and all that stuff. And, just checking off the vision board checklist. And one of those things was to declare for the NFL draft. And he's probably a first-round draft pick. So hopefully he's be able to maximize, what he's got going for him and falls to a good team. And we'll see what his career has in store. But so Benjamin Morrison is no longer on the team, and he is the first Notre Dame player to officially announce their candidacy for the NFL. So we'll see what happens with that one. So that'll be fun. He's probably not the last one to do that either. So we'll kind of see how that list grows as well, Tom.
And again, Benjamin Morrison, same situation as Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler as to you've got to go do what's best. When Benjamin Morrison was hurt, I don't know how many fans reached out and said, well, that's okay. He'll be back next year, right? And you're right. And you're like, no, he's not coming back. He's got to maximize his earning potential. When you go, you've got to go. And when you have a chance to go and be a first-round NFL draft pick, even if he slips to the second round, he has to start his professional clock to maximize his earning potential as a professional athlete. And as great as it would have been to have him back, he couldn't come. You just can't come back. Not after an injury like that. You've got to go and you've got to try your hand at the game's the elite level. So there was no question when he's decided to shut it down, his career was effectively over at that point.
Yeah. And look, there's a reason that he was named a captain as a junior because everybody saw the writing on the wall. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a great leader as a junior. He was. He's a great leader. No doubt about it. But generally, juniors aren't elected captain. But I think it was also understood this is probably going to be his last year at Notre Dame. And he is a great leader, and we want to honor him with that, that award. So yeah, Benjamin Morrison heading to the NFL draft makes perfect sense. not surprised about that in any way, shape, or form. So let's see. Yeah. All right, just checking the chat to see if there's anything in here. Somebody said that let's see, Christopher Galloway. I wouldn't post this if it wasn't said to me by a certain starting left guard's uncle. Sam was offered a great sum of money from Tennessee. I ate dinner and watched the game with his uncle on Monday night. Look, there's a reason. I'm not saying I know where he's going to go, but I will say that there's a reason that he has a no contact clause on his arrival into the portal. Usually that means he knows where he's headed. Is that fair to say, Tom?
Absolutely. And if it's Tennessee, if it's school A, B, or C,
yeah.
Look, that's the way. That's what this game is now. People may not like it. They may not understand it. It may bother them, but this is what college football is in 2025 and moving forward. So if you have a chance to go make some money and a lot of money, and money is that much of a factor, you got to go do what's best for yourself.
And look, and that's the big thing, right? Like I would tell, if I was to counsel somebody, like I've got a kid going, he's going to be playing college football next year. If he wanted to jump into the portal for some reason, like later on in the future, I would tell him, don't go in the portal unless you know what you're getting yourself into and you know where you're going to land, frankly, because there's thousands of guys in the portal right now that don't have a home. And when the music stops, there's not going to be a seat for them. And you don't want to put yourself in that situation. These guys that are jumping in the portal for Notre Dame, I think they got a pretty decent idea of where they're going to end up, or at least a general idea of the kind of place that they're going to end up at. They're not just jumping in willy-nilly. You know, they know that they're going to get a spot. They know they're going to be playing someplace. That's why they're doing it. So does it stink that Notre Dame loses guys? Absolutely. But this is college football. I said last night, don't be surprised any name that comes up and enters the portal. That's the way you have to go into this at this point. Like, just don't be surprised. Somebody's going to hit the portal that you're not expecting, and you just got to move on. You got to trust the coaching staff. They're going to be able to fill that hole either with the depth that they already have or the transfer portal themselves.
Your roster is your roster for one season, and that's
correct.
it.
Yes.
Like that's it really, like we talked earlier in the show, this season was game to game. College football programs are year to year. It's like, this is college football 2024. And when 2024 season ends, this roster, as you know, it ends because it's going to be totally different in 2025. Riley Leonard won't be here. There may be another quarterback that won't be here. There'll be wide receivers or linemen or safeties or this, or like, it's not going to stay the same as it was in 2024. It just isn't. That's not the way of the world, not only in college football, but college athletics. Like it's a year-to-year proposition for every single school in every single sport in the country.
Right. Yeah. And look, it's very interesting to me because obviously it seems like the portal windows change like every year, and just the way things operate change year to year. The spring portal window closes the day before the blue gold game, Tom.
Of course.
So you could have a very interesting blue gold game because there's going to be guys that the writing is on the wall for them. They jump into the portal. They're not participating in the blue gold game.
I can't even imagine that we're talking blue gold game right now. like spring practice. As much as those people over there on campus love football in the Goog, I think somebody would get fined if they mentioned the word spring practice in the next 2 weeks, because it's like how can you even be thinking about, boy, what I can't wait to see what the quarterback situation is in spring practice. Like, let's give it a rest for about 10 days.
I know,
before we start turning the page.
Well, and they've got to figure out, I mean, you know, obviously not to jump the gun, but they've got to figure out, like, they've kind of done the same, you know, spring practice kind of scenario. They have a practice before spring break, and then they go on spring break, and then they come back, have like 2 practices a week, and they really spread it out. Well, they weren't playing until January 20th in the past, right? And, you know, so what is spring going to look like? What is the offseason conditioning program going to look like? I mean, everything is now condensed and stretched and moved, and you've got to have a plan for all kinds of different scenarios if you're a high D1 college football program.
Scrap the blue gold game. It's worthless. It's a fan event. It's not worth it, because we're not going to see the collateral damage to what this 2024 season did to this football team until 2025.
Yeah.
Like there may be injuries, there may be inconsistency, there may be a whole mess of stuff that we don't even think of right now. And it's all going to trace back to the fact that they played until January 20th, and they played 16 college games this year.
Yeah, no doubt.
So spring football, if it's just guys running around in shorts and shoulder pads for 15 practices, let them do that, because the last thing they need to do is to put on any sort of semblance of a spring practice that we had known, and to take this thing into a blue gold game and sit in Notre Dame Stadium for basically a running clock for 60 minutes.
I could not be more with you on that. Like, there's going to be plenty of guys that won't even really participate in spring ball because they're still recuperating from the 16-game season that you just mentioned. Right. I mean, spring ball is forever going to be different now. It just is, unless you're a team that's never going to participate in the post game or in the postseason. You know what I mean? They're never going to be part of the 12-team playoff and all that. But if you are, spring is going to be different now. It's just going to be load management, and all of those things are going to come up. I think you make a great point. You're going to see a lot of practices in shorts and helmets because it's going to be mental, not physical.
It's all those freshmen, KVA, Leonard Moore. Those guys they played 16 games as college freshmen. They're not ready to go to spring practice in 10, 12 weeks.
No way.
It's so silly. It's just so it's so spread out now to where these guys are going to have to take not only a physical break, but a mental break of what they just went through, having to play 16 games for the 2024 season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. But we'll hold off on spring football talk because we'll have plenty of time to get into that. We're ready to turn the page because I know this is shocking to some people, but we're in the winter sports season right now, and we need to talk about Notre Dame hoops. I know you have to turn the page like overnight, it feels like, because you were trying to do double duty covering basketball and football and everything else. I mean, normally that time frame is very small, but this year it really kind of like you're not usually covering Notre Dame football during conference play of Notre Dame basketball, right? I mean, for the most part.
Yeah, Notre Dame football is long. Like last year, I scrapped the Sun Bowl so I could stay home and cover Notre Dame men playing Virginia at Purcell Pavilion, a game they won by 23. And point of pride, let it be known, all three stops, New Orleans, Fort Lauderdale, Atlanta, all three of those stops, I skipped the mandatory media party with free drinks, free food, free everything on all three trips because Notre Dame men's basketball played on all three. In New Orleans, they played at Georgia Tech. I stayed in my hotel room, covered the game from my hotel room there. In Fort Lauderdale, it was North Carolina State, stayed in, covered the game there. And then last week in Atlanta, I covered the Syracuse game from Central New York while everybody was out. All the media was out partying, living it up. I'm sitting there grinding in the hotel room, covering bad basketball.
Oh, it's just disrespectful by the basketball team to have games during the media party. Come on. It's disrespectful.
I'd rather cover a basketball game than go hang out with some of those media creatures on our beat.
That is absolutely fair.
Right?
And you add in some of those national guys, and all heck breaks loose. But
absolutely,
yeah. I never made it to any of the ones I was at either, so don't feel too bad.
No.
The first one they wouldn't let my wife in, so I was like, all right, we'll go someplace else. But anyway, so let's talk about this team. So things obviously aren't going well. You could trace it back to the fact that Marcus Burton missed a handful of games with a knee strain or whatever the lower body injury was. They're 8-10 overall. They're 2-5 in the conference. I would say the last stretch of games have not been great. That Syracuse game was brutal. It's just, I don't even know how else to say it. They had absolute control of that game, and then they didn't. But just your overall thoughts on where this team is right now, and then we'll kind of drill down a little bit on certain guys.
I think it's a team that is still trying to figure out its identity. with Marcus Burton going down for
Yeah.
I think it was 39 days. That really shot the season.
Yeah.
Because not only did you have the Marcus Burton injury where it eliminated your only true handler, but you had Sir Muhammad, who was going to be the backup point guard, also down with a left knee injury that hadn't been right since basically he stepped on campus. So you lost your only 2 point guards, and that just threw everything up in the air. Like it was to a point where, okay, let's go back to early in the season before Marcus Burton gets hurt. This team goes to Georgetown. Georgetown is now touted as an NCAA tournament team. Notre Dame was up 30 on Georgetown. Mm-hmm. So that's what this Notre Dame basketball team could have been this year. But once Marcus Burton goes down, once Sir Muhammad goes down, everything goes up for grabs, and there's no consistency. There's nothing game to game that you can feel like you can do well. It was all about survival with this basketball team. And what do we need to do to hold on for these next 40 minutes and give ourselves a chance to win? Without Marcus Burton, without Sir Muhammad, none of the pieces fit. I don't care who you have coming in. I don't care who you have coming back. I don't care who you have as a coach. When you lose somebody that's as important to this program as a Marcus Burton, you're going to be bad. And it was bad for a long time. It was really bad. It's been a tough watch, even with Marcus Burton back, because they're doing stuff that you just didn't expect this program to do. And I think that's the toughest part of where Notre Dame basketball is right now.
Can you be more specific about they're doing stuff that they don't normally do, just to kind of help out the fans that are listening? And, because it has been very, I guess the word I would use is disjointed. Like they just look disjointed when I watch them. I've gone to a few games, watched all of them on TV. They don't look like they're playing as a team on either end of the floor.
Well, the pieces don't fit. And I think they thought that they would fit.
Okay.
It's just not there. Like, let's take the Syracuse game. It was great that Marcus Burton erupted for all those points. But in the end, it was a situation where you kind of don't want your point guard being your leading scorer, because what happens to the ball movement? They finished with 3 assists against Syracuse. That's hard to do.
Wow. Total?
In a college game.
Wow.
3 assists. And for a program that all we've been told by Micah Shrewsberry is when the ball's popping and the ball's moving and this and then we're doing this, we're fun to watch. When are we going to see that? We haven't seen it. I don't know when we're going to see it.
Yeah.
But to finish with 3 assists, that's too much individual basketball. Marcus Burton taking 26 shots, way too many shots. Nothing about this program right now feels right.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, that's absolutely fair. They went out, they got some guys to come in, obviously some transfer guys. I would say the most influential so far has been Madalacco. He seems to be on the floor an awful lot. Especially when Marcus Burton went down, he kind of had to be the de facto point guard, I guess. Coming in from Princeton and all of that. How would you grade the guys that they've brought in, whether it's transfers or whether it's the young kids who've gotten some time, not a ton? We're seeing more Sir Muhammad, I think, lately. Garrett Sundra, I think I've seen him on the floor a little bit. But how are you seeing these guys, affect the team?
I'm not. And it's really disappointing. Seriously, like Madalacco was supposed to be the guy. Madalacco has gone 2 games, I think 2 games, where he hasn't even taken a shot.
Oh my!
You can't have that from a graduate student. Like I get Madalacco. Let me preface this by saying he's a great kid. I think he's a hell of a leader, but you need more from a 5th-year guy than to be 0 for 0 from the field in games where he's got to score. I think he's too much of a fit-in guy to where I don't know if he's afraid he's going to step on people's toes. He doesn't want to rub his teammates the wrong way. Like, he doesn't want to be the guy that's going to take somebody by the throat and say, this is what we're doing. He's done it at times, but I think he's got to do that all the time because for the most part, this is a quiet group. It's a very unemotional group. And I think they just need somebody to shake these guys out of their tree once in a while and say, this stuff has got to stop. And I thought Matalako would be better at that. And I'm kind of disappointed that he hasn't been. But all the other guys, whether it's Nikita Konstantinovsky, incomplete. Berchebahar, incomplete. The freshman, Sir Muhammad has shown signs, but he has missed such a chunk of time to where it's hard to see where it's all going with him. And Garrett Sundra, same thing. He's so young. He's so thin. He's not ready. And Cole Serta hasn't done anything since he committed the foul against Rutgers because he didn't understand time and score. So it's just something where player development, skill development, I think they're really lacking right now.
And, it surprises me because I feel like Micah Shrewsberry is the kind of guy that would be able to, bring these guys in, get them to gel, at least on the defensive side of the floor, and it's just not happening, man. It's just, sometimes there's no answer, right? Sometimes it's just a bad fit. Like these guys are just bad fits. Is it just a kind of a sophomore slump for Micah Shrewsberry as he look into the future? And we'll talk about that in a second. But, what are your thoughts, man?
Okay, I'll talk about one of our colleagues on the beat, Matt Freeman from Irish Sports Daily. Matt Freeman and I say it all the time, and we look at each other. When John Rothstein from CBS Sports tweets out that Micah Shrewsberry, more plays than Broadway, Matt Freeman and I look at each other and say, when the hell are we going to see some of these plays?
Right.
Like, seriously, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm out on Micah Shrewsberry, but there's got to be something where they turn the corner offensively and you're thinking, wow, you know what? Micah Shrewsberry is known as an offensive genius. They really cut this team up with some of the sets they ran, some of the plays they ran, some of the backdoor cuts or this or that or whatever. Like, when are we going to see what Micah Shrewsberry was supposedly going to bring to this program? Is it coaching? Is it development? Is it the roster? Is it a little of everything? Because right now we're a year and a half in, and I have no idea who Micah Shrewsberry is as a in-game coach a year and a half after he arrived. And I thought we'd be further down that road to where it would be like, Notre Dame's got some tough losses. They had a chance here. They had a chance there, but their roster is a little not where it should be. But you look at everything and you just wonder, I don't know where all this is going. I really don't. And it's coaching, it's player development, it's roster management, it's everything. I think also one of the great things that Mike Bray was able to do, and I don't want to make all these comparisons. Mike Bray here, Micah Shrewsberry there.
But he was the most recent guy, so it makes sense to compare and contrast, and that's okay.
And if fans don't like it, tough. They can turn me off and they can say I don't know what I'm talking about. But this is the one thing that I was genuinely impressed by Mike Bray. He knew what the limitations were for Notre Dame basketball in the ACC. He knew that the ACC, because of Notre Dame football, was never going to give Notre Dame basketball a fair shot. He knew that. And he said, you know what? I'm going to work through all this BS and everything that's working against Notre Dame basketball in the ACC, and I'm still going to go out and I'm going to win games. Micah Shrewsberry has now discovered that it's hard for Notre Dame basketball to exist as a partial member of the ACC, and I think he gets caught up in that a little bit. I think he believes Notre Dame basketball does not get a fair shake in the ACC and can't work through that and say, I'm going to ignore that and I'm going to just set it off to the side, and no matter what happens, whether it's officiating, whether it's scheduling, whether it's whatever, I'm going to relax. We're going to be okay in this league. I think he's too caught up in where's Notre Dame's place in the ACC as opposed to I'm just going to coach this team and we're going to win despite what happens to us in this league.
Absolutely. No, I could not agree with you more. Let's flip over. Let's let's find something a little bit more positive to talk about. Let's talk about the recruiting class that Notre Dame has coming in. I saw a tweet today that the three guys, I think it's just three guys, right, that are coming in, but all three are McDonald's All-American nominees in Tommy Anneman, Brady Kohler, and Jalen Harrelson. All three are McDonald's All-Americans. That's saying something.
They're McDonald's All-American nominees. They're not
okay.
McDonald's All-Americans yet. They won't pick the team until February. But
Gotcha.
they have a 4-man recruiting class. Ryder Frost, who's like 6'8", swingman shooter from out east. He's also part of that recruiting class. And again, it's something where nobody expected Notre Dame basketball to go to the tournament this year. That was never on the table. If you thought it was on the table, you were dreaming. They were not NCAA tournament material. Now watch, they'll get on a run like NC State did last year, and when NC State went to the Final Four, and everything will turn around. But the NCAA tournament was never on the table this year. It should not have been. It was building toward year 3 with Micah Shrewsberry in this recruiting class to where next year, with the guys they have coming in, I think they fit better than what this team fits in the first 2 years under Micah Shrewsberry.
Okay, so do you think that he's going to rely on these young kids to come in and play right away and maybe not, hit the transfer portal? I mean, the transfer portal is always going to be a thing, obviously, but like there's a decent chunk of transfers on this team, and now he's kind of building from a youth standpoint. So do you think the transfer portal, as many guys as they brought in, was kind of a quick fix or an attempt at a quick fix? And now it's going to be more in the recruiting, realm, building from a high school up.
Yeah, it's going to be a player. It has to be a player development program. Micah Shrewsberry found that out the first year he was at Notre Dame and wanted to restock the roster quickly and said, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. And academics said, no, absolutely not, kind of, sort of, maybe.
Right.
So then he realized, where did the 3 transfers this year come from? They came from Lehigh, Monmouth, and Princeton.
Right.
So if Notre Dame basketball fans are thinking, let's just tap into a Kentucky or an SEC team or a Big Ten team or a Big East team and reload that way, that's probably not going to happen. You're going to have to develop this program. You're going to have to develop this roster. It's going to have to be done through 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 4 years, and build this thing the way they traditionally built it, because getting the quick fix from the transfer portal, not going to be an option for Notre Dame basketball.
Yeah, completely agree with you. So, Notre Dame is about little under halfway through their ACC schedule, right? They got Virginia in a couple of days down in Virginia. What is your prediction? Where is this team headed for this season? I mean, obviously, as you said, this is not an NCAA, tournament season or team. It never was going to be. Where do you see them going over the next couple of months here of the season?
Can they get to 10-10 in the league?
Okay, that would be huge.
That would be an absolute monster step, given everything that they've had to work through. And I picked them to go 12-8 this year in the league because I thought it was going to be an incremental step. Second year, Micah Shrewsberry, more guys that he believed that fit his type of play. I thought they were going to make a jump 11-9, 12-8, but right now they're sitting at 2-5. They can't win at home. Like the North Carolina game, I got so much nonsense from fans about saying how I said the North Carolina game was such a turning point for this program. It really was. Like if you can't beat North Carolina in your first sellout under Micah Shrewsberry, if you can't win that game at home, who are you going to beat?
Right.
Like you're not going to get Duke at home. You only get North Carolina once. Who are the other the quality teams in the league? Like you need to eventually beat a flagship program in the ACC to tell everybody and tell your fan base, hey, this program's on the way back. So you don't win that game. Notre Dame fan, the casual Notre Dame basketball fan, they're not going to care that you're beating Boston College or Georgia Tech. They want you to beat Carolina. Mm-hmm. They want you to beat the Blue Bloods on Tobacco Road. And when that doesn't happen, it puts you so far behind where you're supposed to be. And then letting these games go the way they did on the road. Like they had in the NC State game, won in Raleigh, couldn't win it. They were up 17 against Syracuse, couldn't win it. Yeah, they made a great comeback against Duke, but they played so far
well, they were
under
down
their
14-0, I think. Wasn't a 14-0 run? Like
yeah,
they got, I mean, that's almost an impossible hole to dig yourself out of.
You don't. I didn't expect them to go into Cameron and win that and beat Duke with Cooper Flagg and all those guys. But you've got to represent yourself a little better than what you've represented it. And I think that's one of the disappointing factors is I think I added it up. I want to say since the end of 21-22. Let me see if I do my math real quick here. Notre Dame has lost 22 of their last 24 ACC road games. Ooh. You're not an NCAA tournament team if you can't win away from home.
Absolutely.
And again, Micah Shrewsberry is a little caught up in the fact that this schedule was front loaded with a lot of road games. If you could just find a way to steal one or two and then flip it at the back end of the schedule and play a lot of home games, you'd have had a chance. Yeah. They don't have a chance.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, that's where Notre Dame hoops is at right now, folks. And we didn't want necessarily to be the Debbie Downers, but it is what it is, man. Like that's where this team is right now.
If you want the brutal honesty, you're going to get the brutal honesty.
Absolutely.
Like I'm not going to sit here and say all is well with Notre Dame basketball because I don't think Micah Shrewsberry will be the first one to say, "Hey, we're okay." It was such a blow to lose Marcus Burton, and now they're trying to figure everything out on the fly, and you can't be a program that can say, well, we'll figure it out on the fly. You just can't, and until they can get over that type of obstacle, they're not going to be an NCAA tournament team. Maybe next year, but a lot of pieces are going to have to fall into the same exact spots, kind of like Notre Dame football this year, to where everything worked out. You can't have an injury. You can't have an inconsistency. You can't be ineffective. And you can't go on the road and finish with 3 assists and expect to be a really good basketball team.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No doubt about it. So that's going to do it for our talk about hoops, or at least this section of our talking about hoops. Tom, you ready for a little bit of rapid fire?
Let's go.
All right, man. So let's just jump right into this thing. So we're gonna start off with a little bit of football. We'll talk a little basketball, and who knows where we're gonna go from there. But so the first question: there's still another day that Notre Dame players can jump into the portal. We've already seen a handful of guys take advantage of that opportunity. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised are you at the names that have already jumped in?
I'm going Animal House right now, and I'm quoting Dean Wormer for John Blutarski's grade point average. My surprise level is 0.0. As we said earlier in the show, it's the way of the world.
Yeah.
Unless Jeremiah Love jumps into the portal, then I may be a little bit surprised.
Yeah, fair.
But it's free agency. If you can go, you might as well go. And that's what we've seen. It doesn't surprise me. Anybody on Notre Dame football is in the portal. It won't surprise me in the offseason if somebody from Notre Dame basketball is in the portal. That's the way the game is played today. And these kids, they're going to play it. So I'm going 0.0 on surprise.
Love it. Look, the portal is just such a new thing that everybody just has to deal with. Everybody's got to deal with it because, as you said, your roster is your roster for 1 year. And then you've got to re-recruit every single player on that roster, some more than others, obviously, but you've got to re-recruit everybody. And your relationship, I think this is the key here, because if anybody watched Brian's show earlier today, he kind of talked about this at the beginning, but there's a reason that there's so many offensive linemen in the portal, and it goes back to relationships and being as transparent as you can possibly be with your relationship with these players, because it's not like 20 years ago where you're a position coach and you can say whatever you want to these kids and they're stuck. Like, they have no recourse. They have to do what you ask them to do. And if you break a promise, it is what it is, and they'll deal with it. That is not the case anymore. You cannot be that coach. You can't be that kind of coach anymore and expect to retain your players. I'll just say that. So, it's year to year, man. And coaches have to understand that if you've got beef with a player, or you make a promise to a player and it doesn't come through, or, whatever, that player has every right to just be like, you know what, I'm out. And it may surprise people on the outside because maybe that player was playing a bunch, or, whatever the case may be. But it's a different world. Coaches have to be careful with what they're doing these days. You can't make these pie in the sky promises to players if you're not going to follow through with it.
It's not 1985 anymore. It's not 1995. It's not 2005. It's not even 2015.
All right.
It's 2025, and you either play the game the way it's played, or they leave, or you're left behind. So
Right.
Notre Dame, yeah, you don't want to see anybody leave, but guess what? At the end of the day, everybody leaves.
It's just so true. It's so true. And every team is different from year to year to year. And it's even more different now than it ever was before. And people are just going to have to get on board, man. Get on board, or they're going to hit the portal. I mean, that's just the way of the world, and everybody better get used to it. So to answer the question, the portal doesn't surprise me anymore. I get used to. I used to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe so-and-so is leaving. Now it's like, oh, okay. Like, next man up, who's going to take that spot, or, whatever the case may be. But there's nothing like if Charles Jagasaw, or, like you said, Love, or CJ Carr, or somebody like that jumped in the portal, I'd be like, oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. There's got to be a story there, but hey, got to move on. Got to get it figured out. I mean, that's just the way it is.
The portal jumped the proverbial shark last year when Rico Flores went into the portal and decided to transfer, because all we heard all year during Rico Flores' freshman year was how this kid loved Notre Dame, how he loved Marcus Freeman, how he was such a good fit for the place. It was good for him coming back out of California to go to school in Northern Indiana. And he had it seemed like he had created such a niche for himself in that program. And then he's in the portal.
Right.
So it was like, you know what? If Rico Flores, who had all the potential and all this ability and all this bright future ahead of him at Notre Dame, if Rico Flores can go in the portal, guess what? Anybody can go in the portal.
Anybody. So don't be surprised when there's more names. They're going to come up over the next 24 hours. I mean, it's going to happen. So just prepare yourselves, folks, that whoever your favorite player is, there's a chance they could hit the portal. I mean, it just is what it is. All right. So Notre Dame has consistently been kind of in that tier 2 area where they're contending, but just can't seem to get over the hump, at least not consistently. So, Tom, do you buy or sell that Notre Dame is finally at a place where they should be able to contend on an annual basis?
Buying, only with the disclaimer of they should be able to contend. Will they contend on an annual basis? Too early to tell, because, again, as we talked about earlier in the show, we have no idea what the collateral damage of what this season will be long term as far as the health of this football team in 2025. But yeah, absolutely. Marcus Freeman, Pete Bavacqua, everybody associated with Notre Dame football has collectively raised the bar to where they're not going to settle for a college football playoff appearance once every 2 or 3 years.
Right.
Now it's, you better make it 2 out of 3 if you're a serious contender. If you've got the structure, if everything we've heard about this Notre Dame football program where everybody's aligned, the structure's in place, there's a plan in place, you better be able to follow that through year after year after year, to where it's not, well, Notre Dame made it in 2012 for a national championship, and the next time they played for a national championship was 2025. This has to be a semi-regular occurrence for this football program because, as we've said, Marcus Freeman, Pete Bavacqua have raised the bar. Now you better meet that bar every year, every other year.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I think all the pieces are in place for this team to be a contender. You can't predict injuries. You can't predict, things of that nature. I mean, the way that they were able to overcome all the injuries on defense specifically was amazing. And that's a culture thing. That's a program thing, right? I mean, there's plenty of Notre Dame teams in the past that if a starter went down, you were in trouble. You know what I mean? And so they have had a concerted effort to build the depth of this team up so that they can absorb some of those injuries, right? I think you make a great point about the administration being all on board with football, right? And that's not a super recent thing, but it's a recent enough thing, right? You got the new indoor facility, obviously, that was a big one, but then you also got the new football building that's under construction right now and what that's going to bring to the table. And, all of the resources they're pouring into the football program, both monetarily, just all of the above. It's very clear that everybody's on the same page. And I think that's massive. And then you just look to Marcus Freeman and what he is able to do just from a personality standpoint, from a, we can tell what he's building from a culture standpoint with this team, right? Even alumni that never played for Marcus Freeman feel like they're more involved with this team than ever before. You know what I mean? Because he's doing the right thing. He's reaching out to the alumni. They've all said they wish they played for him, and all these different things. It's just a different culture. And I think still, even though it's college, right? Culture used to be such a big deal in college. And I think a lot of teams have gone away from that to a degree with the portal and with NIL and all of those different things. I think it's overlooked. I think culture is overlooked. And I think Marcus Freeman has a very strong culture at Notre Dame. And I think that can overcome a lot of things. And, again, we'll see how it plays out year after year after year. But you can see the incremental, gains and all of that. Can you sustain it? That's the big question. I think the pieces are in place to do that, but we still need to see if it can be done.
Now the tough stuff starts for Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
This was great. But you know what? It's going to get a lot harder moving forward. And you better respond and you better deliver.
100%. He's raised his own bar. That's the thing, right? That's what happens with success is you raise your own bar and failure is not an option anymore. You're going into year 4 now. You've been on the job training, first year head coach, all that stuff. Those excuses don't count anymore. You know what I mean? Like he has now raised the bar for himself and this program to be at a certain level. And I think that's what is going to be expected moving forward, which I'm okay with that. I'm okay with raised expectations. You know what I mean? Like I'm not comparing him to Nick Saban in Alabama yet, obviously, but the expectation was the national championship every year at Alabama. Okay. Like it's probably why he got out eventually. You know what I mean? But it's okay to have that as an expectation. So, all right, let's move on here. So the start time for Notre Dame at Miami was announced today as a shocker 7:30 kickoff at Hard Rock Stadium. I know how much everybody on the beat loves night games, and so I had to ask this question. So over under, Tom, 4.5 night games for the Irish in 2025.
I'm going under.
Okay.
Miami, USC, maybe Arkansas.
Okay, I can see that.
And then maybe either at Pittsburgh, or how about this? How about Notre Dame opens at home against Texas A&M at night?
We're on the same page there.
So I'm going like there's still some ors. I'm only going to go 4 night games.
Yeah.
Because you look at that schedule, not a lot of attractive night games. So like Syracuse, no. At Boston College, no. So I'll go under. I'll go 4 under 4.5.
Yeah, I think 4 is the number. I really do. Because I think obviously Miami, that one's set. But I think A&M, I think that is a prime night game at Notre Dame Stadium. I mean, why not? And they've never done an opener as a night game. I get it. But I could see that being a night game. You've got 2 big home games, in my opinion, right? You've got A&M and you've got USC.
That's it.
I think USC you're guaranteed to get as a night game. It usually is. I think they could make Texas A&M a night game. I really do. So that's 3. And then Arkansas, I think, is a toss-up, but it's an away game. ESPN, ABC loves to put Notre Dame at night when they're on the road. So I could definitely see that one being a night game. So I think you're right. I think it's 4. So I'm going to take the under as well. I should have set the number at 3.5. Sean is so much better at setting numbers than I am. But I think 4 is the number. I think that's where we're going to end up. I do. Just not a fan of those night games, man.
Night games suck. Sorry.
Awful.
They suck. Because, again, fans don't realize when the night game ends, that's when our work begins.
Yes, 100%. You know? Yes. That's when the 3-hour post-game show starts. That's when all of your article writing starts. Like, it is it just makes for a very long night. I'm just not a fan.
So I'm filing my stuff at like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning on night games.
Yes.
So,
it's awful.
So if the media, if fans don't understand that the media doesn't like night games, go to a night game, go home and do work for 3 hours, and then you'll see how it feels.
Right. It's awful. It's absolutely awful.
Night games are awful.
Everybody always gives me a hard time for hating night games, but I'm telling you, they're awful. There's nothing good about it. There's nothing good about it. The only good thing is you get to watch more football, I guess, during the day of other teams, but I would trade that in a heartbeat for a noon Notre Dame game. But anyway. All right, a little hoop talk. So Notre Dame basketball is in its second year under Micah Shrewsberry. There were expectations of a step forward this year, and obviously recruiting has been very good. So I ask you, big picture, is the 24-25 team worse, about what you expected, or better than what you thought they would be?
I'm going to go worse because of the injury to Marcus Burton and because of the fact that they have not been able to establish any sort of identity away from home. Not saying they were going to win at Duke, not saying they were going to win maybe at NC State, but you can't lose by 11 points at Georgia Tech. You can't lose to a really bad Syracuse team the way they did. So it's something where they've got time to get this figured out, but I think they're behind where I thought they would be at this point in 2024-25.
I hate to say it, I'm with you. This is, I thought maybe they'd be a bubble team for the tournament, at least in the conversation down the stretch. Not saying that they would have gotten in, but they're nowhere near that. I mean, they're nowhere near it. And I realize your best player went down, but they had no answers at that point. Like, they didn't know what to do with themselves when Marcus Burton went down. And that's disappointing. Like, I realize your best player went down, but you got to have a plan B. You've got to know, you at least have to look like a functional basketball program when your best player goes down and have some answers. I'm not saying you're going to win all the games when he's out. I'm not saying that, but they just look like they completely fell apart and they had no identity. They had no idea what they were doing. And that was disappointing to me. I expected a little bit more from them on that front.
I've held out hope the last couple of games that Micah Shrewsberry was just going to scheme his way into a win. I'm still waiting for him to do something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I'm with you on that. It's been disappointing. Now, there's a lot of season left. There's time for me to get back on the bandwagon, but at this point, it's been disappointing. I've had more fun going to women's games, obviously, than the men's games this year. Granted, winning has something to do with it, but they just play so well as a team that it's fun to watch, and that's kind of basketball I enjoy watching. That's why I like college over the NBA, but I digress. So the Chicago Bears have hired former Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson as the head coach, and it all became final yesterday. So do you buy or sell this hire by the Bears?
How about both? I'll buy the fact that Ben Johnson was the hot name, but I'm going to sell the fact that he's going to be successful because that franchise is just set up for failure.
Ugh, it's awful.
I think whatever, like it kind of goes back to Mike Bray winning despite being in the ACC. Ben Johnson is going to have to win despite working for the McCaskies. And I just think the organizational structure of that franchise is not set up for success. Some franchises are like that. The Bears were able to capture everything and lightning in a bottle in 1985, but we're a long way away from 1985. And I hope Ben Johnson does well. I hope he has success, but I just think the organizational structure, we talked about the organizational structure when it comes to Notre Dame football, how everybody is aligned. I don't know how much alignment there is in the Chicago Bears as a franchise. There's just too many unknowns as far as who's in charge, management structure, the future of where they're even going to play football, to where there's so much stuff going on off the field that it's hard for whoever the coach is to have success on the field.
It is very disappointing. Just overall the structure of the Bears and everything else, and trying to be a fan of that team. And it's hard. It is really hard. I think they finally got, I think, the coaching search correct. I think they hired the right guy. Now, it's hard to coach when you got both hands tied behind your back, and the roster isn't great, and all of those different things. I mean, you can be a great coach, but if you don't have the Jimmies and Joes, the X's and O's don't matter, as they say. And so I just don't have a whole lot of faith in the program, or in the entire franchise. And so they may have gotten the hire right, but you're right. I'm just not convinced that the future is all that bright, and they may just wear down a really good coach. That could definitely be the case. And then he goes off and is a coordinator again, and then gets another opportunity as a head coach someplace else, and probably has all kinds of success. That's what would happen, for this Bears organization, is Ben Johnson 10 years from now is the coach of another team that's making the playoffs on a consistent basis. Like that's just how it goes. So that's what I'm anticipating. Hopefully I'm wrong. That would be nice, but just a hard team to root for, Tom. It's just a hard team to root for.
Good luck for Ben Johnson. Good luck.
Yeah, right. I hope he's successful. For all of our sakes, I hope he's successful, but I'm not holding my breath. So, all right, one final one for tonight. Conference championship games in the NFL are this weekend, Tom. And you got the Commanders and the Eagles in the battle of the NFC East for the NFC championship. You got the Bills and the Chiefs. We've seen this party before in the AFC. So give me your winners, and then give me your Super Bowl winner.
Can anybody pick against Patrick Mahomes in Arrowhead for the AFC Championship game?
I want to.
You can't. I know. I want to, too. I'd love to see Josh Allen and Bills go to a Super Bowl and win, but you got to beat Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
I'm going straight chalk on this baby. It's Eagles and Chiefs, and the Chiefs are going to three-peat.
Oh, man. Oh, that's the safest bet I've ever heard. That's because it's probably true. That's the problem. You know what I mean? Like, we're all going to sit here and we're all going to pull up a chair on February, whatever it is, to watch the Super Bowl. And we're just going to, it's going to be, the Travis Kelce, what's her name show. And then there's, Patrick Mahomes, and it's just going to be brutal to watch. So I'm going to buck the trend because I think you're right. I'm going to say Eagles-Bills, and I'm going to say the Bills Mafia finally gets it done in the
Nothing wrong with that.
So that's what I'm hoping for. So
I have family in Buffalo. I would love for them to be able to celebrate a Super Bowl.
There you go. Go ahead.
But again, Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City for the right to go to the Super Bowl. TV will say they're not rooting for Patrick Mahomes to win. TV's rooting for Patrick Mahomes to win.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. I don't hide the fact that I'm a Notre Dame fan. And, obviously we were down there in Atlanta, and there's all the Ohio State confetti and everything. And my boss at Penn High School is a massive Ohio State fan. So I brought him home some confetti, and I think it burned through the seat of my car as we were driving back. But I had to do it. I had to do it. And so I brought it home for him. He was very surprised that I was able to do that for him. But, for our Ohio State fan, Archer, that's in the chat, great game. And hopefully, Notre Dame can build from all of this moving forward. But Tom, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. And
absolutely,
I'll be calling on you later. Hopefully we can talk about a few more wins that the Notre Dame basketball team has put together.
We need to see progress.
Yes.
And anytime they want to start, go right ahead.
Hopefully it starts on Saturday. That's the next game down in Virginia. Fingers crossed. What are the
another winnable ACC game.
Okay.
Virginia's not a very good program.
Okay.
And again, another situation where you look at it and say, if Micah Shrewsberry is this offensive genius, he needs to figure out a way to scheme Notre Dame to a win because Virginia, let's face it, Virginia stinks.
Okay.
And I don't want to say that about Notre Dame. Like Syracuse, that's the worst Syracuse program I've seen in the 27 years I've been on this beat.
Wow.
So that's almost 3 decades and 2 conferences ago. Notre Dame has no business losing at Syracuse. They lost. Notre Dame really they're 0-9 lifetime in Charlottesville. They really should be 1-9. They have no business losing to Virginia. And we'll see what happens. But Notre Dame should win that game on Saturday, get some momentum, and then they get to come back at home at 9:00 on a Tuesday night in front of select dozens and play Georgia Tech. So we'll see.
Select dozens. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right. So, Tom, again, thank you for hanging out with me. The reason Tom's here is Sean is in Boston. Their women are playing Boston College tonight at 7:00. So make sure you tune in on the TV, turn down the volume, flip on the radio, listen to Sean Stiers do his thing as the Lady Irish bring home another win, hopefully. So that's tonight at 7:00. So you got 45 minutes to grab some dinner and then watch the women and play some really good basketball. That's usually how it goes, Tom.
There you go.
All right. So,
all right, I'm leaving.
All right, man. Thanks, Tom, for hanging out. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us tonight. We will talk to you guys next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.